Chapter 22. The Residence of Dr. Raemond Morningstar, London, England, June 7th, 1889. Dear God. The words, breathed into the empty night air, echoed over the rubble. Fuck, a second voice said, far more bluntly. The two men peered into the darkness, their footsteps muffling the distant yells of bystanders as the city's collective attention was drawn towards the site of the explosion. Emmanuel Warwood, Esquire, stood tentatively at the edge of the rubble, peering over the low, broken walls for some sign of life in the crater that had once been the home of Dr. Raemond Morningstar. It was his partner, however, Professor Martin Torres, who first noticed the movement. Hand, a breathy voice said from beyond the wreckage, causing both men to jump. Hand, hand, hand. They watched hesitantly as a person shoved aside a collapsed segment of wall and lifted up the limb of another person. Your hand, the figure laughed. Through the darkness, Martin recognized the body on the ground, half buried beneath brick and covered in plaster dust. Get away from them, he shouted, scrambling over the rubble. Martin practically tackled the figure, pressing him against a chunk of wall which had yet to collapse. The man's eyes were wide with fear as he stared up at Martin from behind a curtain of long, tangled brown hair, streaked with premature grey. His clothes were ragged and dirty and flapped about him in the wind of the oncoming storm, each piece far too big for his body. The man did not squirm or resist Martin's grip. Rather, he simply went limp, and when Martin let go, he slid to the ground, pulling his legs up to his chest. Their hand came through and grabbed the other, the man mumbled. His face was white as chalk, and dust from the building's collapse was caked around his eyes where he had been crying. Thank them. I need to thank them. Professor? A young voice asked weakly. Martin stepped back from the strange man and turned around, casting a quick glance to Emmanuel, who was already moving around the area to look for anyone else. Jamie was beginning to push themselves up, but their arms gave out, and they crashed back into the rubble with a grunt of pain. Jamie, Martin gasped, leaning over a charred and broken support beam to crouch beside the youth, resting a hand behind their head. Oh, thank God you're all right. Are you hurt? Can you feel everything? Jamie's expression was contorted in pain, their eyes squeezed shut and their face caked with ash, but they nodded. I think so. I can feel everything because everything hurts. Martin offered a small laugh. Well, you did have a building collapse on you, dear boy. What happened here, Jamie? He began pulling the larger chunks of debris from Jamie's body, helping the young person sit up. I can't explain. Jamie leant forwards, cradling their head in their hands as Martin gently placed a hand on their back. Wait, what are you doing here? Jamie blinked the dust out of his eyes and looked up at Emmanuel. And with Mr. Warwood? We got worried, Martin explained. When Athena's bags arrived without him, we figured this was the best place to look for them, but there was a terrible explosion and, well, we never would have guessed it was here of all places, but... Martin? Emmanuel yelled, making both the professor and Jamie jump. Jesus, Martin, get over here and help me. Martin stood up, leaving Jamie with a reassuring pat on the shoulder, jogging over to his partner's side. Emmanuel was desperately throwing aside debris, trying to free the body underneath. Martin could barely recognize the man beneath the thick layer of blood which coated his profile. Ray's hair was matted to his face, along with the layer of dust and soot, and Emmanuel tried once again to pull him from the building's remnants. Ray stirred, his nostrils flaring as he took in a sharp breath, but he did not wake. With Martin's help, the two men pulled him out into the open and laid him on the splintered remnants of the floor. His eye, Emmanuel muttered. Martin clasped a hand over his mouth, trying not to gasp at the sight of Ray's raw and mangled face, now pulled properly into the light. He could hear voices now just down the street, and the sound of a police whistle a few roads over. "We have to leave," he said, moving back towards Jamie. Emmanuel looked up, shaking his head as if he could rid himself of the image of Ray's crumpled form. "What? Martin, what do you—" "If those officers get here, it will be a world of trouble for all of us, and neither Jamie or Ray are going to be in the right mindset when that happens. Get Ray to the carriage, I'll help Jamie." The professor crouched beside Jamie once again. "Here, Jamie, are you able to stand?" He offered out an arm for support. "I think so," Jamie said weakly, putting his weight on Martin as he stood. "Good lad," Martin nodded, steadying them. "Where's Athena? Is she here?" Jamie blinked, looking around. Emmanuel clearly had the same thought as he was also inspecting sections of the rubble. I don't know. He should be. I pulled him out. They fell in, and I pulled them out." Martin tilted his head. However, before he could ask what Jamie meant, the youth was knocked out of his grasp as the man with the white streaked hair barreled into them. Jamie screamed, and Martin instinctively readied himself to fight the figure. The man lifted Jamie up into a hug, a surprising feat considering his thin, emaciated frame, and began spinning them around in the air. "It was your hand! You pulled me out!" They laughed wildly, continuing to spin Jamie around in circles. "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." There was an unhinged nature to the man's shouting, yet there was no malice. Simply pure gratitude and joy behind the childish laughter. Jamie's screams petered out into shocked and unsteady breathing as the man put him down, and Martin pulled the youth close protectively. I just wanted to help my friend," Jamie whimpered. The man nodded. "I need to thank them too. I didn't think they were real, but then I tried to push them out, and I grabbed hold because I saw your hand pulling, and I knew that was my chance, and—" Martin cut the man off, placing a hand on his shoulder. "This other person, the one Jamie was holding, where are they now? Do you know?" The man blinked as his wide eyes locked on Martin, as if noticing the broad man was there for the first time. "The others. They were carried away by the others. I saw it when I woke up, I think. The others took them."